Hello and welcome back to Shanghai International Circuit in China for race 10 of the 2023 Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia season. Saw a great race yesterday at the front of the field. Some strong competition, but again, it was the new Pro Class champions, Chris van der Drift and Marco Giltrap, taking what would be their 7th win of the season. It's been a storming championship for them so far in season 2023. Of course, van der Drift came into the season after a 3-year hiatus as the 2019 Pro Class champion. He's done it again. That championship is wrapped up. But the beauty of this series is there are 4 championships across the course of the year. Pro, of course, Pro-Am, Am, and Lamborghini Cup. For drivers who have come into the sport a little bit later in their careers, business out of the way, family out of the way, decided to go racing, and this is exactly where they wanted to be. And we've seen a sterling battle for competition in that championship. In fact, the class leaders just pulling into position a little bit further back in that bright orange Siam Gas course Lamborghini Super Trofeo Huracan Evo 2. That, of course, is Super Chai from Thailand. We will get into the point structure a little bit later on, but we are lining up on the grid for the second race here on our return to Shanghai after that long break for the COVID pandemic. And yesterday we saw some strong racing as we were talking. Pole sitters yesterday are the pole sitters again today. They are the dominant force in the championship this year for Lamborghini Auckland, for Giltrap Group and Absolute Racing. We are, of course, talking about the 2 New Zealanders, young Marco Giltrap and the very, very experienced Chris van der Drift. They will start from pole position again today, but alongside them, the Venezuelan Jonathan Cecotto, second-generation racer. Of course, his father, a multiple motorcycle world champion, F1 driver, touring car driver of some great renown. And he has got a great heritage in the sport. Showed in Australia during the championship's first visit down under to the Bend Motorsport Park that he really was a standout. Didn't have his teammate with him at that particular juncture. Li Chung unable to make it down from China to the Bend Motorsport Park. Cecotto was forced to drive as a pro driver, which he could do, and he absolutely blitzed the field on the debut for most of those drivers down in Australia. But we're back at Shanghai. Yesterday's race, as you would have seen, anybody that followed it, was some fantastic racing. But today, look, we've got brilliant sunshine, ambient temperature in the low 30s, humidity about 50%, so not too uncomfortable. We're well and truly into autumn in this part of the world now. So it will be a very, very interesting race. Certainly hot in the car, but not as hot as it was last time out at Inje Speedium in South Korea. Ambient temperatures 37 degrees. Track temperatures got as high as 55 to 57 degrees. Very uncomfortable in the car. Very busy circuit. 22 turns, just 3.9 kilometres in race distance, or race length rather, circuit length. This one, very much a contrast. We are, of course, Shanghai International Circuit, the scene of the Chinese Formula One Grand Prix, and it will return to its host of the Chinese F1 Grand Prix next year on the 21st of April. The circuit, which was first opened back in 2004, 5.451 kilometres, 16 turns, a good testing and demanding mix of low speed, medium speed and high speed corners. Of course, the big parabolica, turn 13, onto that long back straight. The main straight also very long into that very demanding turn 1, 2, 3, 4 complex. And we are, of course, running the full F1 length of 5.451 kilometres. Track record, lap record for Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia came very close to being broken yesterday. In fact, only about 5/100ths of a second, set in September 2018 by Mikko Eskelinen with a 2:06.333. And Marco Giltrap came very close to that yesterday. In fact, he and Chris van der Drift separated by just a tenth of a second in the 2 15-minute qualifying sessions. But ultimately, they were unable to break it. Today is another day. That, of course, was an earlier evolution of the Huracan Super Trofeo. This is the Evo 2. Very much a different race car to the last model. You can see that just in the design of the car. Very much designed to be more closely associated with the road car. Of course, they are a variation of the road car, but these are purpose-built race cars. This isn't a GT3 car. Very different with respect to a Lamborghini Huracan GT3, the Evo 2 of that model. Aerodynamics is a big difference between that and the Super Trofeo Hurricane Evo 2. And ride height's a little bit different. The control tyre, the control Hankook rubber that we run on, different diameter, different width. Ride height of the car is a little bit different. Straight line speed performance, though, is also a little bit different, and that can work in the advantage because of less drag from the aero for the Super Trofeo model. So we see the difference between the GT3 and the Super Trofeo around a circuit like Shanghai International Circuit. The difference in lap times, only about 9/10 of a second. What's interesting is the lap record holder on a GT3 car around this circuit as it stands at the moment is David Chen, who will line up in position number 3 in the number 16 Harmony Racing entry. It wasn't done in a Lamborghini, I'll point that one out, but very handy AM classified driver is David Chen. And the local driver will be looking to try and impress in this race. You can see the 3-minute board has just gone up. The crowd will be off the track. We'll get the cars started and we will be making a rolling start, as is the structure and the format for Lamborghini Super Trofeo competition around the world. Takes a lot of the pressure off the drivers. Of course, a lot of amateur drivers in this particular classification. A lot less pressure on them getting off the line and making a lightning start, but of course, certainly a lot less pressure on the drivetrain and on the cars. So it's one less thing for these teams to worry about. Competition's been fantastic all through season 2023. Certainly there's been the hangover of COVID, a lot of track time lost for a lot of drivers. A lot of drivers hadn't been behind the wheel for quite some time. But certainly when we lined up for the opening round at Sepang in Malaysia, the racing was absolutely fantastic. Although we were slightly delayed, I've stopped making weather predictions as a result. We were just watching the flag bearer at the back of the field, about to wave the green flag behind the cars to signal that the lights could run and they could head off behind the safety car. And unfortunately, the heavens opened. We had 50 minutes of solid torrential rain, absolutely drowning rain. And when we got a restart, about 15 minutes after the rain had stopped, a couple of teams went out on slick tyres. Of course, one of those is the experienced Chris Vanderdrift, and he stormed off into the distance. The other one that surprised a lot of people was the SQDA Grit Motorsport entry of John Quan and Brian Lee. They also elected to start on slick tyres on a drying circuit, wobbled around a little bit for the first couple of laps, and certainly the two Absolute Racing entries stormed through the field in the closing laps. And that was a great introduction for the South Korean team on their debut outside of their home country, and they've been real standouts so far this season. As a result, they now share the lead. Sadly for them, they had been leading comfortably-ish, should we say. There was a few points in the bag for them as the officials now leave the circuit, but they are now leading the AM classification alongside their teammates, their Absolute Racing teammates, and that is the number 19 star performance by Absolute Racing entry of Aniwat and Prom Sombat, who took another AM class victory yesterday. And we'll get back into where all of that sits as this race unfolds. 50-minute race duration, compulsory pit stop window opens at the 20-minute mark. It closes at the 30-minute mark. Every single team must come down pit lane and effect a pit stop. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're a single driver entry or whether you are a 2-driver entry. You have to stop for a minimum allotted time. If you exit pit lane ahead of that minimum time, you're going to be issued a drive-through penalty, and that will all but destroy your ability to compete for top honours as we get underway. Left of field, or left of screen rather, that is Chris Vanderdrift, the New Zealander, now the Pro Class champion again in this category, certainly for 2023. Right of screen rather was one of only 2 teams to have taken an outright victory from the number 84 Absolute Racing entry, and that is Jonathan Chicotto alongside Lee Chung. The other of the teams to have taken an outright win in the championship, and that was at race number 2 at Sepang in Malaysia. It was Dan Wells and Oscar Lee. We go through the grid, starting from pole position. Chris Vanderdrift in the number 84 Absolute Racing entry. Alongside him, Jonathan Chicotto for TRT Racing. On the second row, David Chen in the Harmony Racing entry, alongside Aniwat in the star performance by Absolute number 19. Row number 3, Oscar Lee, not a bad qualifying effort from the young driver from Hong Kong. He will pass over to Dan Wells during the compulsory stop. Alongside him, John Quan in the SQDA Grip Motorsport entry we were talking about earlier. Ray Liu makes a welcome return after missing the last round thanks to damage that took place during the second race at Fuji. He will start from position number 7 alongside Henry Kay. I was trying to morph Henry Kay and Eric Kay into one in the Triple Ace Racing entry. Eric, of course, having started yesterday, had a bit of drama down at turn 11, got tapped, and that dropped them a little bit further back through the field. Jiajin Wu will start the R&B Racing number 4 entry. They make their debut in the championship this weekend. Jason Lowe, after that car was repaired after a big contact down at turn 14 that came between Jason Lowe and Tony Walls in the Objective Racing machine. Both those cars have fortunately been repaired overnight. Vincent Tyre will start the BC Racing entry from position number 11 with Haziq. He and his brother Harry took their maiden victory in Lamborghini Cup yesterday. They will start from position 12. Super Chai, the championship points leader in Lamborghini Cup, will start from 13. Tony Walls will start the Objective Racing entry he shares with son Jackson from position number 14. Kumar Prabhakaran in the Iron Links Racing number 37 will start from position 15. Smart Say, in fact it's David Lau in the D1 Racing Team entry will start from 16. Hao Wen Yu in the Vortex Racecraft number 7 will start from 17. Orion Endurance's Gabriel Moroni making a return to the championship from position 18. Bringing up rear of field as we just saw him disappear in the bottom of the screen was Camlung Racing's Dr. Ma, who had a fantastic battle with Moroni and also with Super Chai as he worked himself through to second yesterday, which was a solid result for the Camlung Racing entry. He will start rear of field position number 19, but controlling the field, the very experienced Chris Vanderdrift, the very racy Jonathan Cicotto will do everything he can to try and get around Vanderdrift in the opening couple of laps. We've seen this scenario before. Vanderdrift has been able to weather it, and why not? He is one of the most experienced, most decorated drivers in this part of the world, and he will know exactly how to start the number 84 entry. So the all-black entry for Vanderdrift, the yellow, red and black entry for Cicotto alongside, and David Chen, of course, the fastest man around Shanghai Circuit in a GT3 car, starts in that white Harmony Racing Lamborghini behind Vanderdrift as we get set to go for a start. Drivers in line. We should see it green, and we are green. Drivers jumping out to try and make the most of this very wide Shanghai International Circuit to get a better line. But there's one racing line into that 1, 2, 3 complex, and Chris Vanderdrift has it. Cicotto will hang out wide, and that might open the door for David Chen. Oh, he's just tucked in behind, and behind them, a little bit of competition. Oh, that was very clumsy. John Quan's in all sorts of dramas. He's just cleaned up his rival. I can see why he closed the door. That is the battle for the AM Class Honours, and he's got the advantage over Aniwat. Has he done any damage? You've got to be very, very careful. And that looks like it's the number 51 entry potentially that's moved up too. So they've made a solid start. Oscar Lee too looks like he's moved into position number 5. In fact, that's not. That might be the 28 entry. He also has made a very, very solid start. So we'll see how this lines up as we get the timing monitor start to make the most of where we are on track position. But what a great start from John Quan. He has really muscled through and he's got the position. He needs the advantage. They're neck and neck on championship points with their teammates. And Aniwat is another position further back from John Quan as he storms up under the rear wing. It is the number 21 entry, the DW Evans GT entry of Oscar Lee, holds down position number 5. That's a very good start too. The further forward in the field, that's the number 18 entry. It is Ray Liu. Of course, colours slightly different to what we've seen him in the past. He's moved forward very, very strongly. And this is the great performance we saw from him in Fuji. Also in the Ben Motorsport Park, where he managed to qualify very strongly in the field. And he had that drama, of course, at Fuji. Sidelined the car, missed NJ completely. So a great recovery from Ray Liu to be up into position number 4. There he is, the all-green entry, as John Quan looks to try and get past Oscar Lee, because he knows that Aniwat and Prom Sombat will charge back through the field and do what they can to try and get that position back, because between the two of these in the final race on Asian soil heading into the world final in November at Vallelunga in Italy, They want to carry the advantage into the final 2 rounds of the season, into Italy, to a circuit that many of these drivers haven't seen. Of course, Oscar Lee's done some miles alongside Dan Wells. Oh, he's opened the door, though. He had a look at the back of Ray Wu, and that could just have opened the door. He's got to be very careful. It looks like a little bit of contact on the left front, perhaps from that opening race. Sorry, the opening corners from John Kwon. So he's poked the nose down the inside. He's got to be very careful to try and avoid contact as much as humanly possible, because these modern GT cars rely heavily on the aero at the front of the field. 2:07.5 last time round on the opening standing lap for Chris Vanderdrift. He leads the field by 0.6 of a second over Jonathan Cecotto, a little bit further forward in this field. David Chen is 2.5 seconds back from the race lead in position number 3 for Harmony Racing. And this fantastic battle for position number 4 between Ray Wu, who is leading the AM category as a result of this, DW Evans GT's Oscar Lee, and John Kwon in that very racy purple and blue SQDA Grit Motorsport entry. He will be looking to try and move further forward if he can. They've been outright podium finishes in the past. Been a very strong combination, have John Kwon and Brian Lee. What can Oscar Lee do about Ray Wu in front of him? He's going to try and get that position back, because he knows the further forward he can be in this field as he pitched to hand over to Dan Wells, the stronger the combination they will be across the closing stages of this race. Cecotto's been unable to make too much of an impact on Vanderdrift, and they are certainly pulling away from David Chen. Ray Wu just holds the optimum line out there on the outside to tip into the corner, because you are open to a late braking manoeuvre, and we have seen in the past people manage to mess that up, just dive down the inside thinking they're going to catch the other drivers under brakes, and a little bit of contact. We saw that yesterday, of course, with that contact that took Tony Walls out. That was Jason Lowe perhaps making a little bit of an ambitious move, but of course we talk about it all the time, the low seating position and sort of further back central to the car that you sit in these cars, very small wing mirrors, and certainly the speeds you're competing at, your vision is very much impaired. So do you want to make if you want to make a passing move in a modern GT car, you have to make it stick well in advance of the apex point of the corner, because if somebody starts to turn across on you and they don't know you're there, obviously contact ensues, and that's where the damage starts, and that can certainly end races. Johnson Huang sharing with Vincent Tai in that number 51 entry that's keeping Anuwat at bay at the moment. He's doing a brilliant job. Saw Johnson Huang involved in a little bit of contact yesterday. That forced him back to rear of field. They had to mount a late race recovery and managed to get through back through the field to position number 11 by the checkered flag, but unfortunately for them, they could have finished a lot stronger than where they were. 2:07.1 next time round for Chris Vanderdrift, and he takes that lead out to a second over Jonathan Cecotto. You can see Anuwat's doing everything he can to try and get past Vincent Tai. Henry Kay doing a brilliant job too. He's right up under the rear wing of the number 19 entry. He'll be looking to try and make amends for the tough day they had yesterday. Contact with Eric down at turn 12. They've just gone through 12, 13. Parabolic. He's gone very wide. Henry's got to be very careful there. The AstroTurf on the outside of some of these corners might look pretty, but there's not an awful lot of grip, and you get that wrong. I was seeing it at Shanghai Live a couple of years ago, coming out of turn 10. Hiroshi Hamaguchi, now a big part of the Squadra Corsa family. Wasn't in a Lamborghini at that particular juncture, but went out on the exit of turn 10, got onto the AstroTurf. It spun him straight into the wall, hit it square on at enormous speed, massive impact, and fortunately, thanks to the safety built into these cars these days, he was able to step out unhurt. But that just highlighted the risks of running too wide and using too much of the curb at any circuit in reality, but certainly here at Shanghai International Circuit. There is Anuwat alongside Prom Sombat, number 19 star performance by Absolute Racing entry, neck and neck on AM Class Championship points with John Kwon and Brian Lee. They're Absolute Racing teammates, the SQDA Grit Motorsport entry, and at the moment they have the advantage, although it looks like there may have been a position change there. Has, in fact, Vincent Tai managed to move around John Quan? That's interesting. No, he hasn't. Of course, Vincent Tai is now back behind Aniwat. So Aniwat's managed to make his way past. So here is your outright leader, your race leader. It's starting to get a little bit boring. There's been 9 races. This is very much a Max Verstappen-esque effort by Giltrap and Vanderdrift. Of 9 races, they've won 7 so far this season. No surprise, they've already wrapped up the championship for the pro category. They've also only finished worse than second. Well, they haven't finished worse than second so far this year. So 7 wins, 2 runner-up positions. And they're looking to try and extend that advantage again and add another victory to their tally. Of course, the focus has changed now. They wanted to win the Asian Championship. Here's this battle further back going on for AM-class honours. And Ray Wu now is behind John Quan. Can John keep him out? This is what we were talking about earlier. Deep braking down here. Oh, Ray's got the inside. As John's seen him, contact often ensues. Aniwat's going to be the beneficiary of this. He's closed right up under Ray Wu's rear wing, and he may well be able to take that position away. So Ray's done a brilliant job. Great to see him back behind the wheel after missing South Korea, rather, and see him be as competitive as he has been so far in this race. That's just allowed John to get a little bit further ahead. So Ray's gone from defence, then attack, and back to defence. And he's got Aniwat right under his rear wing now. Can he hold him out and manage to hold that position? Aniwat knows to keep this AM-class battle alive, he really needs to make that position change and move through on the number 18 entry and try and get himself a little bit further forward in this field. They are 1, 2, 3 as it stands at the moment in the AM-class categorisation. Behind them, they have got the number 91 entry. And that, of course, is Henry Kay. Oh, just a little bit deep under brakes. Tried to cut across to the apex and lit the rears up. Anyway, just watching that. I mean, the durable tyres, these Hankook control tyres, but you don't want to be tearing them up too much, just getting on the throttle too quickly. Pretty much a flowing circuit. Not massive tyre wear, medium compound tyre, which makes it very, very durable. We have a compulsory pit stop, but you're not changing tyres, you're not refueling the car. So really tyre wear hasn't been an issue. Even in the immense heat of South Korea, tyre degradation really wasn't an issue. It was something drivers needed to consider, but the tyre bank that they have allows them to make sure that they have enough solid rubber for each race. Pretty much can start both races on fresh rubber. And they have roaded tyres, often teams like that. Otherwise they're stickers, which of course means the sticker's still on the tyre. It's brand new, it's fresh. But they have the choice themselves. Now that's Gabriel, no, it's the number 7 entry. That is Hao Wen Liu, who's sharing with Ben Rouget. Hence the French flag on the window behind the door. And this is them seemingly a little bit further back in the field. Now there's Super Chai. He's in the Siamgas course entry. And he is currently 2nd. So Harry-O and Hazico has started this particular race, won their very first Lamborghini Cup trophy, or had their first outright win yesterday in race number 9. They're leading the field again, and they're comfortably clear. In fact, they're ahead of Jason Lowe in the number 33 entry, the Iron Lynx entry that got damage in that contact between Jason and Tony Walls yesterday. Great to see both those cars back in the field. In fact, Tony Walls is sitting in position number 13. So he's just right behind Jason Lowe at the moment. I'm imagining if there's going to be a passing move there, it'll be a very wide one. But certainly after that contact yesterday, the very experienced crews, certainly the Iron Lynx entry, strong foundations in Europe, run multiple entries over there and in multiple race teams around the world. They've had the cars all repaired. They are back well and truly underway. And they are involved in various different title battles through the field. So we're talking about Lamborghini Cup. It is Hazico leading the way in position 11 outright, the number 5 entry for the HZO Fortis Racing team. Second in Lamborghini Cup at the moment is the number 71 entry of Superchai. Third at the moment is Gabriele Moroni, the number 88 entry, on his return to the championship. We hadn't seen him up to this point of the season. Of course, a very experienced campaigner in Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia. A number of seasons out, of course, with that COVID hangover. But now back to competition. Great to see Gabriele back in the field as we clock up another lap. That is 6 laps in the books. And the gap, well, it's remained a fairly consistent 8 to 9 tenths of a second. 2:08.4 last time round for race leader Chris Vanderdrift. 2:08.5 for Jonathan Cecotto. 2:08.7 for David Chen in the Harmony Racing entry. So they are fairly evenly matched, but of course David Chen is a little bit further back in this field. We were going through the order of the Lamborghini Cup entrants. We'll just go back to the championship points in that particular classification. Superchai is leading on 105. Kumar, who is in position 4 in the field at the moment, is in position number 2 on 96 points. And Dr. Ma, who finished a very, very respectable second yesterday in class, is third on 90 points. But the O brothers bagged 16 points yesterday. They've had 2 DNFs rather, so far this season, which has really impacted their championship points. Hadn't had a victory up until race number 9 in the season. And they are further back on 80 points, but the way they're going at the moment, they may have a bigger impact. That might move them into a podium position. Dr. Ma currently in position number 5 in the field. We're looking at the Harmony Racing entry of David Chen, lap record holder in GT3 competition around this circuit. Just a little bit taily going into the Parabolica. As now John Quan's under the rear wing of Oscar Lee. He'd like nothing more than to make up another position, knowing that a little bit further back in this field that Ray Liu is holding up Aniwat, John Quan's title rival. But Oscar Lee, again together with Dan Wells, did a little bit of racing overseas in Europe last year. Of course, not much going on in this part of the world, so they took the competition overseas, and that really did help add to the experience bank of Oscar Lee. We've seen that during various stages this year. And whilst he may be the AM link in the Pro-Am entry, of course, Dan Wells being the pro driver, he has been very, very impressive this season. And he continues to impress as the season has wound on. Had a few dramas during the course of the year, turned around, of course, at Fuji at the chicane, a couple of corners from home in the second race, whilst in a solid position. That dropped them back down the order. No fault of his at all, but that is part of the tyre racing in this field. Now, that is the number 5 entry of Hazico, so he's up behind the number 4 entry. That is the R&B Racing. They're the debutantes in this series. Yu Wei, Jiaxin Wu is behind the wheel, I think, of the number 4 entry for this one. I'll just double check that to confirm that I'm actually correct. Yes, that's right. And what he has is Jason Lowe immediately behind him. Where's Tony Walls? Yes, he's a respectable distance back from Jason Lowe after the contact the two of them had yesterday. So race leader with 7 laps in the books is Chris Vanderdrift. 1.2 seconds up on Jonathan Cecotto. Third place for David Chen, who's now 4.7 seconds back. He's only dropped 2 tenths to Cecotto that last lap round. Cecotto's pace has dropped off a little bit just in that last lap. I don't think they're quite lapping cars just yet. It's Jason Lowe looking to try and make a move around Hazico. Let's hope if he does that, it's clean. It certainly is. It's a good move around turn 8 into 9, the left-hander, then into 10, the next left-hander, the exit of this corner we were talking about earlier, where you've got to be very careful on the exit with the AstroTurf. You can see it just on the left of screen. You get that wrong and that can have a big impact. Ray Liu still under fire from Aniwat. A couple of wheels off on the exit of the corner. This big, big long run. Aniwat trying the flashes. Ray's doing everything he can to keep the door closed. just adjusting his position a little bit. That might incur the wrath of the stewards. Anyone had a look? I don't think it was on. And it was a combination. The two Thai drivers, very, very little separating them. A little bit like their Absolute Racing teammates at the front of the field, Marco Giltrap and Chris Vanderdrift. Different story at the start of the year. Young Marco Giltrap had done a little bit of racing in New Zealand, or quite a bit of racing in New Zealand, let's be honest. Done a little bit of racing in Australia, one make GT competition, and he was in his formative stages earlier in the year, very much classified as a driver to watch. Has just landed himself a fairly major drive in Australia for season 2024. Is, of course, part of the Super Trofeo Junior program, alongside, of course, Jackson Walls. And the other part of that combination, of course, is Shanghai Circuit, who shares the driving duties in Harmony Racing Entry. Anyone goes down the inside, and he's just managed to get the nose alongside. Ray's opted out, which was, well, that's showcases the racing we often see in Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia. Just let him through. There was no need to fight over it. There was nothing to gain. He'd lost the position quite clearly. Ray very wisely opted out of it, and that's opened the door for Anuak to get through. Be a little frustrated because I guess he thinks he has more pace than Ray, even though Ray had qualified very, very strongly in this field. He was in position number 7. He actually started 3 positions further back from Anuak, but Anuak clearly got slowed up on the start. A bit too excited about the competition, and that dropped him back through the order, and it's taken him a long time to get through Anuak, and I think you'll see the pace of that car start to improve. This is the battle further back in the field, with the drivers battling for podium positions in Lamborghini Cup, and look at how racy they're being. That's still the 28 entry of David Lau. Dramas for him at the Bend Motorsport Park a little bit earlier in the year. Contact with the barriers. And despite the fact that was an alien circuit to most of these drivers, the lack of contact and dramas on track was incredible. We saw that too in South Korea, but he is right in this battle. That is Dr. Ma we're looking at on track. The Kamlung Racing entry for number 83, Alan Shinrun team. Shout out to Alan, and a shout out to Keith Vong, who'd been sharing the driving duties with Dr. Ma all season. Had suffered a bit of an illness prior to South Korea, was forced to sit out of the car. We hope he's on the improve. We look forward to seeing him, if not later this season, and certainly back behind the wheel in season 2024. So for the Australian-based Macanese driver, just watching Dr. Ma, keeping a close eye on his performance, and what a great drive he put in yesterday to finish second in that category. 5 cars in the field, one of them ahead of him. Kumar Prabhakaran he's feinted to the left, gone to the right, and he's got the move made. Pit stop window clearly open. Jason Lowe in, and I would suggest that might be, I was going to say it was Oscar Lee, but it doesn't look like the colours, but I'd be surprised if Oscar Lee wasn't in pit lane. No, in fact, that is the number 4 R&B Racing entry. Jiajin Wu had to hand over to New Wei. There's a few more drivers coming down pit lane. One of those is the number 7 entry. That is Hao Wen Liu. He's going to hand over to Benjamin Rouget. And we were just talking about David Lau in the 28 entry. So he has also hit pit lane. And he will hand the car over to Smart Say. And they will try and move their way forward in the race. So compulsory pit stop window, minimum pit stop time. Get that wrong, drive-through penalty. You really don't want to get that wrong. Drivers have been very close to their minimum pit stop times. In fact, in South Korea, some drivers were as little as half a tenth. Oh, John Kwan's got a little sideways. It's thrown him off the circuit. Keep it going. That looks like it might have been down at turn 9. Must have been a replay. I've missed that one. Apologies on the replay, but look what's happening on track too. That's the number 4 entry, R&B Racing rejoining. Mark Darwin now behind the wheel of the number 33 Iron Lynx entry. There is the fat cat, Garfield himself, just relaxing. There's nothing relaxing about the performance these guys have put in. Luxury Motorsport during the course of this season. Tough run at home in Malaysia to start off the season. A little bit slow to get their championship battle started, but certainly the last few races have been very, very impressive. Jason Lowe and Mark Darwin. with the exception perhaps of the slip-up yesterday for Jason Lowe and that passing move on Tony Walls. We were just watching Oscar Lee come down pit lane, so clearly he wasn't quite at the line when the pit stop window opened. So the team had to send him around one more lap. The aim of a Pro-Am entry, of course, during the compulsory stop is Prom Sombat, bottom right of screen, just lets Aniwat out of the car, and he will jump back behind the wheel to continue the job against their rivals. The two Absolute Racing teams on screen. Brian Lee now due to take the battle back to Prom Sombat, as they did yesterday. Tried everything to try and get past the tie entry, couldn't do it. At the moment, they have the advantage. So these two cars will be let out basically together, and we will see how this one unfolds. Who will end up on top in that particular battle? Now, is that Vincent Tai continuing to run round in front of Hazik O? I don't think the O brothers have been in the pits just yet. They still have another 7 minutes before the window has closed. Remember, it's a 2-minute lap, and you need to be in the pits before the window closes, or you get the drive-through penalty. Single driver entry, of course. Dr. Ma, Kumar Prabhakaran, Super Chai, all Lamborghini Cup entries. They are able to take the stop when it suits them. And here we are, game on. This is for AM Class Championship lead. They are both tied on points. The two Absolute Racing run teams, the Thais and the South Koreans, tied currently on points. One would like to take the advantage to the final two races of the season at Vallelunga in Italy in mid-November. A little bit of time to get all of that prepared and sorted, but one of them will take that advantage on points. 15 points for the win, 12 points for second. They're currently sharing the top of the championship points on 108 points apiece. Jackson Walls now behind the wheel of the Objective Racing entry. Manal will have that all fired up with the team. Tony out of the car. It's now Jackson's turn. He's really been a bit of a star performer this year. Didn't do too badly, let's be fair, in Formula 3 or Formula Regional equipment, but he really has come alive as a young driver once he stepped into a GT car. He, of course, is part of the Super Trofeo Junior program. And he, alongside Marco Giltrap, of course, and also the other member of that team, Shengwei Zhu, the Chinese driver, will battle with the other junior drivers from around the world to see who gets Squadra Corsa support into their 2024 campaign. Fantastic program, that one. As this battle continues, 51 entry, AM Class entry, and the O brothers, of course, are Lamborghini Cup entry. Now, that's either coming in or going out. If it's coming in, then that's Henry Kay. We'll hand over to Eric Kay if the car's leaving pit lane. It's Eric Kay on his way out. No, I think they're coming in. So Henry is just about to hand over to his brother. Great job, up to position 7. Of course, the pit stops had already started at that point. Ray Liu is also in the number 18 entry. He will hand that over to Jilong Kang. As Zeke O really is fired up. He doesn't want to get out of the car. I think he'd be quite happy to just keep going around. Not so sure about his brother. And if you ever want to see a celebration to remember on a podium, take a look at the O brothers. I missed yesterday's, unfortunately, due to another commitment. I'm hoping that people that continue to follow yesterday's race followed that through, and they didn't let me down because, boy, they love a celebration. Hadn't to this point been on the top step of the podium, but even to finish third, they are just so overjoyed by the opportunity to be a part of this championship. It's great to see drivers like that. And for the most part, just about every driver and every team in this field at some point during the season has been on the podium in their respective class. And that is part of the attraction and the success, of course, of the one-make Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia Series. We don't have the field of entries that you might have in Europe, but of course we don't have the population in many respects to be able to feed that. Some great footage on board there. A good crowd in store too, which is nice to see for the return of competition at Shanghai International Circuit. And that is your race leader. Calm as you like, nothing to gain, everything to lose. If you manage to find some sort of advantage or look for some sort of advantage during the pit stop. 7-time winner from 9 races this year, 2 second-place finishes. Marco Giltrap, we were talking about earlier, has come alive as a young driver. The fact that on this circuit, Shanghai International Circuit, over 2-minute lap, he was able to qualify just a tenth of a second. In fact, he was a tenth of a second up, I think, on Chris Vanderdrift. That is impressive. He's really learnt a lot. What better mentor to have than CVD? And Marco Giltrap will do a brilliant job. Now, Li Chung may well have left ahead of him. I don't know that he did, but certainly showing Li Chung as leading. Is now Super Chai. Pits from position 2 in Lamborghini Cup. There is Kumar Prabhakaran just behind him for the Iron Lynx team. As Zico continues to run around, they will have to be in at the end of this lap. There's no question about that. And Vincent Tai to hand over to BC Racing teammate Johnson Huang. Zico to hand over to his brother, Harry O, as they get into what will be their last lap behind the wheel. Vincent Tai has done a brilliant job to manage to hold him out. They're currently holding position 4 and 5 in the race. No! Brian Lee, what have you done? What have you done? What's happened? That's down at turn 2. He's facing the wrong way. He would have been right in the thick of a battle with Prom Sombat, and that has major implications in the AM Class Championship battle. What has happened there? Will we see a replay? That is very, very interesting. That is going to have a big impact on the AM Class battle. He'll be very, very frustrated with himself. John Quan and Brian Lee, great ambassadors, fantastic human beings, lovely blokes. They love their motorsport, were absolutely brilliant in South Korea. They were rock stars in their home country with what they've done in this championship this year. Big crowds, a lot of support, and they were right in this championship battle. They'd like nothing more. But I guarantee Brian Lee will be very dirty on himself if he's managed to have an own goal and spin the car. Certainly it looked like he had the advantage, but now that changes back to the number 19 entry. This is going to be very, very interesting just to see where all of this plays out. Pit window closes within a minute. So give us a couple of laps and we will be well and truly sorted in this race. There is Dr. Ma. He is absolutely on fire. He's not a young gentleman, but he's certainly very, very competitive. Just gone way too deep down there at turn 6. Was, I don't think, looking for a move, but he was right up there under the rear wing of Kumar Prabhakaran, and that was for position. So Hario about to jump in. Haziko has jumped out of the car, and for the HZO Fortis Racing team, the crew are just checking everything looks okay, probably adjusting tyre pressures, just clearing the front splitter of any leaves or debris that may just make the engine a little hotter than it needs to be, and they will send him back out. So there are 3 of your Lamborghini Cup drivers. They are right there in a line. Super Chai in the all-orange Siam Gas course entry. Then it is Kumar Prabhakaran for Iron Lynx, and then the Kamlung Racing entry of Dr. Ma, second yesterday and is looking very, very racy now. Li Chung out in the number 10 TRT Racing entry that he shares with Jonathan Chicotto from position 2 in this race. No, he's just coming in. So Chicotto's only just made the window. Has he made the window? And I reckon part of him running very wide there is he's come in absolutely barnstorming to make sure he meets the pit window. But that could be interesting. Ray Liu sitting right of screen. He's part of the TRT operation. The Ray team, as it is, has been very inspired by the performance of Jonathan Chicotto this year, and that has played a part in his performance. There he is right of screen with the green boots, keeping a close eye on what's going on. But fingers crossed they have actually made the pit window. That could be very, very interesting. Harry O about to leave pit lane. The race leaders in the Lamborghini Cup classification, where will they come out in this field? Just can't see wide enough to see which car shot through ahead of them and who might be behind them on the main straight. From my position here, it's very difficult to see where the cars are on track. We'll get a timing update very, very soon, and that will certainly give us an indication of where we are in the field. So we'll keep a close eye on this one. Fingers crossed they have managed to make it, but that was a very hot entry from Chicotto to try and get into pit lane to hand over to Li Chung. This battle again continues. He's got a little bit better sorted out next time round as Dr. Ma. He's seen Kumar ahead of him. Kumar also not a young gentleman, came into the sport 5 years ago. I asked him about why he was doing the European Championship and the Asian Championship. He said it's purely seat time. He said the unfortunate downside of, whilst it's super competitive and some fantastic circuits in Europe, he said big fields of entries. They've had close to 50 cars at various stages during the year, and that means track time's a little bit more challenging during practice sessions. And of course, during the racing, a lot more going on, a lot more cars around you. And that can tend to be a little bit of a challenge with respect to fighting for track position and the ultimate contact that ensues as a result of that. So he really does enjoy what he's doing over here in Asia, and for much of this season had been the championship points leader, but had a couple of setbacks just in recent rounds, and that dropped him back to position 2 behind Superchai. Now, on track as it stands, well, there it is. There is a graphic representation of where we are. What's interesting about that is Harrio's now at the back of that field. He's not almost a lap up. They didn't have that big an advantage. They've lost ground in pit lane, so something's happened during that compulsory pit stop, and they have dropped right back down the order, unless we haven't seen a spin somewhere along the line. Now, there's no change for position there. That is the comfortable race leader, Chris Vanderdrift, who I imagine may have taken Lee Chung. That's Lee Chung in the background behind him, having taken over from Chicotto. And he's just about to put a move on the number 28 entry. It's not the number 28 entry, sorry. That is, it's thrown me out now. The new liveries on some of the cars during the course of the year. We'll get to that in a moment. I think that's Gabriele Moroni, to be honest. So he is also in the classification for Lamborghini Cup. And the guys that we're looking at, I think, were ahead of this run. So Superchai is now back in front in Lamborghini Cup. Prabhakaran is in position number 2. Dr. Ma is in position 3. And as we pointed out, looking at that graphic representation on that long main straight, you could see that Harrio was the back of those 4 cars. Moroni, who's just been taken by Vanderdrift, now in position 5. So Vanderdrift in front. Lee Chung in the number 10 TRT racing entry. We hope hasn't missed the pit entry before the window closing, and he is comfortably holding down position number 2. Dan Wells, though, may have something to say about that. I'm waiting for my timing monitor just to refresh and update on that front, and it will give us an idea. Well, I've got an idea. It's 9 seconds between Lee Chung and Dan Wells. We'll look at the lap time in a couple of laps as to where they sit in that particular list. So that is Mark Darwin behind Jackson Walls. And I'd suggest that Jackson Walls has made up a position in the number 11 entry. He has. He's now up to position number 9, third in class in Pro-Am. That's being led, of course, by Lee Chung at the moment over Dan Wells. Pro Series classification is Marco Giltrap out in front by 5 seconds over the Harmony Racing entry that now has the talented young Chinese driver Shengwei Zhu behind the wheel. There is the number 18 entry. Jilong Kang is in a bit of a battle for position there with the number 4 entry, the R&B Racing entry of Liu Wei, who's gone down the inside. Liu Wei's got some pretty good experience too. And he's taken the position. Oh, I was just hoping he wasn't going to make a dive there, because that really wasn't the position to make a dive. He didn't, fortunately. And they carry on. There is the battle we were just talking about between Jackson Walls and Mark Darwin. The black, white and red, predominantly black entry for Objective Racing, the number 11 ahead of the number 33 Garfield. The Iron Lynx Racing entry of Jason Lowe, and now Mark Darwin behind the wheel, just top of screen. So they are back in positions number 10 and 11, or actually 9 and 10 as it stands at the moment. Okay, I'm suggesting that they missed the pit window. I'm thinking that the team just messed that one up. And I'm only guessing because I'm not seeing any indication, but the fact that the car's come into pit lane and it hasn't stopped would be a drive-through penalty for Lee Chung. So that's disappointing, and that will have a bearing on their position in the Pro-Am Championship. Of course, that combination didn't score points for Pro-Am at the Ben Motorsport Park, round 2 of the season. Lee Chung, unfortunately, unable to get down to Australia in time. Jonathan Chicotto was there. He turned laps himself. He was the lone driver in the car. despite the fact he'd never seen the circuit outside of a simulator before. He absolutely set the circuit alight and would have put in the perfect performance, qualified on pole for both races, led the field away for the opening race, but unfortunately jumped the gun on the start, exceeded the minimum speed requirement between the start line and the other signalling line, which escapes me at the moment. And because he'd done that, as Kumo goes down the inside, this is for the lead of Lamborghini Cup. He's just overshot it. And Super Chai gets the position back. That's down at turn 11. And unfortunately, Chicotto just got penalised as a result of that, and that ultimately dropped him back down the order. When we talk about yellow, black and red cars and battles in the field, that isn't the yellow, black and red car that Brian Lee is looking for. He's looking for the number 19 entry. They are 1 and 2 still in this race, but I think if we have a look along the main straight, now we've cut back to Kumo Prabhakaran. He is trying to do what he can to get around the Siam Gas course entry of Super Chai, but that move has basically opened the door up again for Dr. Ma, who's in position number 3 and looking to make it back-to-back second place finishes. Of course, top step of the podium at Fuji at one point. So Dr. Ma and Keith Vong at that stage. Now it's Dr. Ma on his own. That is Dan Wells. He's just gotten around Gabriele Moroni, blue entry. Wells is still trying to make his move further forward. At the moment, the gap is 8 seconds between Dan Wells and the young Chinese driver, Shengwei Zhu. But up front, though, my goodness, is he getting away or what? There's obviously been some traffic for Wells. And here is Zhu under fire. Sorry, that is Li Chung under fire from Brian Lee, who's doing what he can to make amends for that spin. We're still not quite sure exactly what transpired in all of that, but what did transpire is he lost the lead of the AM classification and handed that back to his title rivals. A star performance by Absolute Racing entry, two Thai drivers, their Absolute Racing teammates. He's trying to mount somewhat of a recovery. Currently, the 19 entries in position number 4, and they've just moved past the, they haven't alone moved past the number 10 entry. Li Chung, the number 63, has too. So in 2 consecutive laps, the 19 and the 63 have made up positions. So that would tend to suggest that From Sombat's not that much further ahead of... In fact, he is. I checked the timeline. It's 10 seconds. So that suggests that the TRT Racing entries had an issue to be passed by both those drivers in one lap. His last lap, fairly indicative, 2:31. His rivals are all running in the 2:10s. In fact, what's interesting is the Harmony Racing entries doing 2:14s. Kumar's tried again, and he's really messed it up this time. Dr. Ma comfortably back in position number 2. So he's trying. That clearly isn't the way to try. It's twice now he's just run too deep, and that's opened the door for Dr. Ma, who doesn't need a second invitation. Thank you very much. I'll take position 2 if you don't want it. And that's implications too in the outright championship battle. So that one will go all the way down to the wire at Vallelunga. As for Pro-Am, I think that could be close today. Go back through to the championship points in the Pro-Am category. Coming into this one, Oscar Lee and Dan Wells on 117 points. Their real competition, though, is Tony Walls and Jackson Walls on 74. Wei and Miko Nassi not here this weekend. They are on 89 points. And I tend to suggest that if Oscar Lee and Dan Wells, currently in position number 2 in this race, finish where they are, they should more than likely be classified the Pro-Am class champions for this year, and they'll be very, very happy for that. The new look DW Evans GT team to mount a performance like that is very, very impressive. This is a battle back for, I think that's positions 11, 12, 13 and 14. Benjamin Rouget, the number 7 entry. Johnson Wang in the number 51, the 28 entry of Smart Say, and the 91 entry of Eric Kay, who's right behind Johnson Wang. It's been a bit of a position change there, and Johnson Wang's been the driver to come off worst of that lot. It's dropped him back down the order just a little bit. We're talking about how impressive the race leader, Marco Giltrap, is. His lead now out by 12 seconds. Last lap at 2:10.8. Just to highlight, I shouldn't make too many bold statements until I've checked all the facts. 2:09.5 for Dan Wells. No real surprise, but let's be fair. We saw this a little bit in South Korea. Dan Wells reining in Marco Giltrap. I think he got the gap down from 32 odd seconds down to about 14 at the flag. Giltrap didn't have any need to be pushing harder. Right now, 12 seconds up, he has no need to be pushing harder. There's only 7 minutes left in this race. Pole sitters were Giltrap and Vanderdrift. They set the pace. They can turn in a lap record lap if they need to. Of course, conditions are a little bit different now. Tyre wear is different, certainly this late in the race, so it's not pristine, ideal conditions. But I think one for one, you could see that if he needed to, Marco Giltrap would certainly step up the pace and move himself further away. Oh, there's the 18 entry now, just running a little bit deep. That is Jielong Kung. Just made an error. That was down at turn 11. And that's opened the door up a little bit. So Mark Darwin now may take advantage of that. It's the number 33 entry, and certainly he was battling a little bit earlier with Jackson Walls. We're talking about how good Jackson Walls is. Just check Jackson Walls' lap time last time round. The young Australian driver, 2:11.2, so a little bit caught up in traffic in that one. 2:09 again for Dan Wells. And the race leader, 2:11.7. So the lead's now down to 9.9 seconds. I'm suggesting that perhaps Marco Giltrap got caught up in a little bit of lap traffic that time round. So that is a fairly big advantage. You won't want to give too much more than that away over the closing stages of this race. Too many green or purple sectors happening, not this late in the race, but certainly position-wise. We have Giltrap and Vanderdrift leading from Oliver Lee and Dan Wells in position number 2, from Sombat and Anuwat in position number 3 for the AM category. So that is Pro class, that is Pro-Am and AM category. Your leaders in those respective categories, and Super Chai, the points leader in Lamborghini Cup, continues to lead there. This is a battle between Johnson Huang and Eric Kay. They've been battling over the same piece of real estate a number of times over the last few rounds. Let's see how this one comes off. Certainly both have done a lot of one-make and GT competition in Asia. Eric's got a pretty good dive late in under brakes, but Johnson had better drive off the corner and the inside line as they go through the fast sweeping turn 7. But Eric's not given up. Can he get him on the right hand at turn 8, the crossover? No, I think Johnson's closed the door. Next passing move might be down at 9. He's got to make it a definitive move if he does. Does he dive down the inside? Johnson's moved across to close that door on that one. Has that opened the door for turn 10? You can see Eric's got on the gas, just got a little bit taily on the exit. Now he's going to have to try again if he wants to down at turn 11, or just regroup, recover, and make a big jump down at turn 14 under brakes into the final corner. No, he's got it wrong completely. So unfortunately, far too deep in under brakes at turn 11. Just ran it wide, and he's lost a little bit of ground in that. So his chance to make the move down at 14, I think, is all but gone. Yeah, Johnson Huang's opened up a bit of a breather. Again, be very careful on the exit of that corner. You can see some equipment in the area for the upgrades to the circuit, and tweaking of the circuit as it goes through from this part of the year through to April 2024 for the return of the Chinese Formula One Grand Prix. But right now, we're doing the final race, the final 5 minutes of the Asian season, or the Asian component of the 2023 Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia season, as the battle further forward for position. We see the number 7 entry for Vortex Orion Endurance, Benjamin Rouget, Frenchman behind the wheel, French sticker on that window. What do we see on the other side? Well, it should be how in use. Country of origin. Expect that to be the correct sticker to be on that side of the car, as Mark Darwin's doing everything he can. Back in position number 10, the 88's had a spin. That's Gabriele Moroni. Looks like it might be down at turn 11. Just trying to get the engine restarted. It's burning the excess. Yeah, it is down at turn 11. He's had a spin under brakes going in, as Mark Darwin's doing his level best to try and make up a position. Oh, here we go. No, it wasn't. Moroni had no idea that Shanghai Zhu was up the inside, just got tagged. Again, it's that low driving position. And, Brian Lee doing everything he can to try and mount a recovery. You could see just in the background the Prom Sombat in the number 19 Star Performance by Absolute Racing entry disappearing. So all that ground that Brian Lee might have made up is now well and truly gone. Is that Dr. Ma? Which car is it? Yes, it is. It looks like it's Dr. Ma. All that great work he'd done. He was in position number 2. I'm sure Kumar Prabhakaran will have regained that position now. So a little bit of drama late in this race, certainly getting tired in all of this. These guys have been driving alone, whereas the bulk of the entries in this field are 2 driver entries. Some of the older drivers in the field have been doing it alone. Oh, you can see the leader coming up behind him. Super Chai in front of him, just got on the gas. And Chris Vanderdrift, very lucky in that particular instance. He had enough room to judge what was going to go on. But for Dr. Ma, that'll be very, very frustrating. It's dropped him further back down the order. Let's hope he has managed to hold on to a podium position. But I'm not sure. I think Harry O may have been able to sneak through and grab position, but certainly we've just seen Gabriele Moroni having a spin. So 2 of the Lamborghini Cup entries suffering dramas. There is the race leader for Lamborghini Cup, of course, Super Chai, for Siam Gas course. Just been lapped by Marco Giltrap, the race leader. Gap's down to 6.3 seconds. So I wonder if there's any drama. There is your second placed car. It's just over a minute to go in this race. A win, whether by half an inch of paint or 15 laps is a win. So there's no need for Giltrap to have to push any harder, but let's just hope he doesn't have any dramas, because last time around 2:12, 2:13 as he's crossed the timing line that time. And the lead, as we just do a quick refresh here just to see exactly where the lead is, it's 3.3 seconds. Let's see. I'm pretty sure Giltrap's got this covered, unless there's got some kind of mystery issue with the number 84 entry. The Absolute team don't tend to get very much wrong. They don't have a history of that. They've got a very big history of success, Ingo Mater and Fabien Fior. Of course, one of their many bases around the Asian region here at Shanghai International Circuit. As Marco Giltrap fires things up, certainly the car looks fine. It doesn't appear to be any kind of issue for him. Just behind him, he's had to get round Super Chai, Lamborghini Cup points and race leader. Don't think he'll have lost too much time in all of that, but I don't think Marco Giltrap's got any such issue. That was the 3rd placed entry. It's now Aniwat and Prom Sombat, the leaders of the AM category, who took that over after the 16 got into a little bit of difficulty. And this is a good battle for position 2. It's the number 4 entry. New Way. Oh, just trying to get up the inside. Couldn't quite get it done. And the number 10 entry immediately behind them. So this is a battle for position number 5 in the field. But up front, clock's gone to 0. Must be close to watching the race leader. This is a good battle on track, but it's not for outright position. The number 4. Has he got it? Yes, he has. That is a great drive by Liu Wei. And he has just got down the inside. Li Chung immediately behind them. Had been in position 2. And look who's immediately behind them. What can Jackson Walls do? The young Australian has put in a storming run over the last couple of laps. He's moved right up onto the tail of that group. Can he do anything about it? They can't do anything about this man. Marco Giltrap, for the 8th time this year in 10 rounds. Giltrap and Chris Vanderdrift do the double. 6 races on the trot. They have been undefeated, and they want to carry that form through into the world final at Vallelunga, not only for the Asian Series, but also for the World Championship. Across the line second, Dan Wells, as they have done a number of times this season, but top honours for Pro-Am alongside Oscar Lee. Victory in the AM category and 3rd outright, the star performance by Absolute Racing Team entry of Aniwat and Prom Sombat. Who will be the leader for I'm just looking at the timing monitor. It was saying that Superchai was up to position number 4. I don't think that was quite right. There's been a bit of a hiccup somewhere along the line there, but Superchai will cross the line, I imagine, as the leader of the Lamborghini Cup classification, showing them in position number 7, but I think they were a little bit further back than that. So something's gone awry just in the late stages of the timing. We'll get an update on that. Now he's dropped back to position number 11. So Superchai takes the win in Lamborghini Cup. So outright was Giltrap first from Dan Wells and Prom Sombat. Then you had second in AM category. Yes, there is Gabriele Moroni being monstered across the line to get the checkered flag. Second in AM category was Brian Lee after that early spin for him. And then in third position is the R&B Racing entry of Liu Wei. Good position move forward for him late in the race. Now, what happened behind them? So the classification further back, position number 6 rather, was the number 16 entry from Harmony Racing, David Chen and Zhu Sheng Wei. Position number 11 for Jackson Walls. So he did manage to get Li Chung, but wasn't able to get any further forward than that. But that was a storming drive through from Jackson Walls, trying to find the best lap for the young Australian driver, 2:08.7, fastest lap of the race. And another Hankook trophy going to the Absolute Racing entry of Vanderdrift and Giltrap. So they're taking all the silverware again this time round. 2:07.1, fastest lap of the race, set on lap 2 by Chris Vanderdrift. We get back down the order to position number 9 to Mark Darwin, and the number 33 entry he shares with Jason Lowe. Position number 10 for the number 18 entry of Jilian Kong and Ray Liu, who did such a brilliant job during the opening stages of this race. There is Oscar Lee just opening the door to let Dan Wells out. Congratulations to him. Chris Vanderdrift allowing the race leader Marco Giltrap out. There won't be too much fanfare there. They'll enjoy the fact that they've taken another win. They're not being pretentious by any stretch of the imagination. They do what they need to do. They talk it through. Dan Wells rather, just congratulating Marco Giltrap. And really, this is one of the great performances of the day from Sombat and Aniwat for the Thai team, just putting into position number 3, third outright in the race and victory in the AM classification. You can see Kumar Prabhakaran just pulling in there behind them. I don't think he was the Lamborghini Cup winner. Just double checking that. No, it was in fact Superchai, as we suggested. So there is John Flynn, the man who makes all of this happen for Squadra Corsa in the Asian region. Very experienced operator. Turned the odd wheel himself over the years, various race cars. Good understanding of the way this operates. Some congratulations going on between the various teams. So stay with us. We will hopefully hear from some of the drivers. We may or may not as we go from Parc Ferme up to the podium. We'll go through 4 levels of podium, of course. Pro, Pro-Am, Am, and LC Cup or Lamborghini Cup. As we look forward now the season has come to its conclusion in this part of the world. We look forward to the return to Vallelunga in Italy. But there is your finishing result. Pro winners and outright winners, Marco Giltrap and Chris Vanderdrift. Pro-Am winners, and I think they have probably wrapped up the title unofficially. Provisionally was the word I was after. Oscar Lee and Dan Wells. Aniwat and Prom Sombat in the number 19 star performance by Absolute take top honours in AM from their title rivals Brian Lee and John Quan, who'll be kicking themselves after that incident for Brian Lee. Liu Wei and Jiaxian Wu in the RB Racing, their debut in the category this year, take third for that classification for the AM category. And we look further down the order to the Lamborghini Cup. It was Superchai, followed by Kumar Prabhakaran, the O brothers, and through to Dr. Ma and Gabriele Moroni. Here's a replay of the start. Chris Vanderdrift closing out Jonathan Chicotto. He stuck with the New Zealand driver to try and keep David Chen at bay. Of course, David Chen, the GT3 lap record holder around here, but look behind them. That was really over AM class honours. Ray Liu snuck through in the number 18 entry and he managed to get himself further forward, but that was purely down to who would have the advantage in the AM class battle between the SQDA Grit Motorsport entry and the all-tie entry, and the advantage went to John Kwon. Took a while for Aniwat to move his way past Vincent Tai. Oh, I missed that one earlier. That was a very, very wide exit. He's going to be very careful down there. And the number 63 entry just getting it a little bit wrong. And that was John Kwon earlier in the piece, before the compulsory pit window. And we had a great battle. Hazico was right in the mix, battling there with Jason Lowe earlier in the race. But Hazico had a comfortable lead in the LC Cup, or the Lamborghini Cup classification. They took their first victory yesterday, but ultimately this man, Super Chai, would take over the position. This was for a passing move. That may well have been Henry Kay. Then we're into the compulsory pit stop. Look at this fantastic crowd in action for Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia's return to Shanghai International Circuit. And young Marco Giltrap behind the wheel. He has been the pace setter. Now that move was as a result of the fact that Jonathan Chicotto knew the pit window was closing. He did everything he could to try and get his way into the pits before the window closed. By the look of a compulsory pit stop drive-through afterwards, it had a good indication that they had missed the pit window. I'm trying to read something at the same time as update you. I'm sorry, I'll get back to the job at hand. Certainly it looked like they had a drive-through penalty, and that put them down the order. A little bit of contact here for the number 16 entry of Zhu Shengwei. He's made contact with Gabriele Moroni, who was in the LC Cup, and there is the blue and purple entry of Brian Lee having to make amends and avoid the contact. And unfortunately for Dr. Ma, he'd moved his way back up to second after finishing second yesterday. A brilliant drive by him for the Cam Lung Racing team. He had a spin just at the exit of turn 2, just ahead of race leader Marco Giltrap. But for Marco Giltrap and Chris Vanderdrift, win number 8 for the season. They were crowned the Pro Class champions last time out in South Korea. This is just extending their advantage, but really what they're doing is laying the foundations for the World Final at Vallelunga in Italy when we get to that part of the year, 16th and 17th of November, and then ultimately to the World Final just 2 days later. And that is one they would really like to add to the resume. The beautiful Shanghai International Circuit, a lovely day, temperatures in the low 30s, humidity nice and comfortable. Those drivers probably be a little bit hot behind the collar right at the moment, but not too much drama on track, fortunately, and some more great clean racing. Season started, of course, back at Malaysia, Sepang International Circuit on the 5th to 7th of May. We're at the Ben Motorsport Park for the debut of the championship on the 9th and 11th of June. Went to Fuji in Japan on the 14th to the 16th of July. Moved from there to Inje Speedium on the 18th to the 20th of August. And, of course, we're here at Shanghai International Circuit, Vallelunga in Italy for the final 2 races of Super Trofeo Asia, the final 2 races of Super Trofeo North America, and the final 2 races of Super Trofeo Europe will take place on the 16th and 17th of November before going into the World Final. So stay with us as we go into the podiums. We'll no doubt start with the outright podium, which will see a great result for the drivers that finished on the top step, Marco Giltrap and Chris Vanderdrift. 8 wins, 2 second-place finishes, and runaway leaders in the outright overall and Pro Class Championship, extending the advantage too of the absolute racing operation. Second for DW Evans GT and Oliver Lee and Dan Wells. Third across the line for Star Performance by Absolute. And that, of course, Aniwat and Prom Sombat, the 2 Thai drivers. Fourth this time round for SQDA Grit Motorsport entry of Brian Lee and John Kwon. Fifth, the R&B Racing entry of Liu Wei and Jiaxin Wu. Their maiden appearance in this championship for 2023. Very close to the first of the podiums. And then we'll go a little bit further back down the order.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now having the podium ceremony for race 2 of 2023 Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia.
Been fantastic to be involved in such a such a great return to action for Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia.
Your winner
The lengthy off break for the global pandemic certainly had a big impact on plans for drivers that were due to come in season 2020 and then 2021 and stretched into 2022. But for season 2023, we are back in action. Marco Giltrap, right of screen. Chris Vanderdrift, left of screen. Another great result for them. 6 consecutive victories. They won the first round of the season in very wet conditions to start. Oscar Lee just up on the step. Dan Wells, are we taking second or third? No, just check. No, here we are. That's where we are. Third place position for Aniwat and Prom Sombat. They'll be very happy to be third in the overall classification, and that will give them a 3-point advantage going into the 2 races at Vallelunga in Italy. And for those teams, they will certainly have a little bit of homework to do before they get to the hallowed turf of the Italian circuit. And that will highlight what happens in that championship. But certainly the teams on the left there, Dan Wells and Oscar Lee, and Giltrap and Vanderdrift, pretty certain, based on the result of today, that Oscar Lee and Dan Wells will be crowned the Pro-Am class champions for this year after what has been a pretty sterling championship run for them. They were undefeated up until the opening race at Fuji. That drama that saw contact that turned Oscar Lee around from the lead of the classification, dropped him well down the order. Had a DNF in the opening race at Injay, unfortunately with a clutch issue. They quickly resolved that and then went through to the final race with another victory. So for them, that was 6 victories out of 8 races. This makes it another victory. Yesterday, of course, second to Lee Chung and to the other driver we'll see shortly, Jonathan Chicotto. Traditional champagne time, always popular. Now that they're not getting back into the car tomorrow, they've got a couple of months just to get the race suits cleaned. They won't be too worried about that. Temperatures nothing like they were in South Korea. A few teams avoided the champagne display, although there's a number of drivers, I think, turn up just to be on the podium to spray the coveted champagne. We'll certainly see that in some of the classifications coming up. Lamborghini Cup, for instance, they do love a celebration. Disappointed that I missed the one yesterday for the O brothers. That would have been memorable, I'm sure. Just clean up the podium, and we will go again for Pro-Am. We will see Dan Wells and Oscar Lee back.
And now
this time, top step of the podium. They will be joined, of course, by the father and son combination of Tony and Jackson Walls after that storming drive for the younger of the 2 drivers through the field. Get them up to position number 7 in the field, having taken their Pro-Am rivals, the number 10 entry of Lee Chung and Jonathan Chicotto. So back for another go. And Wells is trying to clean off some of the champagne. Oscar Lee's another one who loves a celebration. Always ecstatic when he's on the top step of the podium.
Third place.
Enjoys his racing. Certainly learning a lot from Dan Wells.
Jonathan
Jackson Walls, Tony Walls is up.
Lee Chung.
So for Objective Racing, a good result for them. They'll be disappointed to have missed South Korea, but couldn't be helped. Jonathan Chicotto to the left. Lee Chung stepped up to the podium, the shorter of the 2 drivers. Certainly needs a seat insert when he jumps behind the wheel. And there is your Pro-Am category podium. 4th in Pro-Am was the number 7 Vortex Racecraft team, and 5th in Pro-Am for D1 Racing, the number 28 entry rather. 5 cars in that classification. The Pro class, well, 1st and 2nd, we don't do a classification for Pro. 2 entries in that field, of course, the number 84 Absolute Racing entry of Vanderdrift and Giltrap, and the number 16 Harmony Racing entry of Zhu Shengwei and David Chen.
Thank you, Mr. Scardoni. And now we have in champagne time.
Jackson Walls has exit stage left, so is Tony Walls. Not for Chicotto. He loves the champagne celebration. Yeah, Oscar Lee's been perfecting it. Thanks, Dan Wells. Another good result for the DW Evans GT team. Of course, they've started that operation. Dan Wells part of that. And They came into that after the opening round of the season and really have performed very, very strongly. Great to see that effort. As we go into the AM classification, and this one has been brilliant. We came into this round with the two leading teams, the two Thai drivers tied with the two South Korean drivers, 108 points apiece, and they went nose to tail. The advantage certainly in the benefit of the two South Korean drivers during the opening part of the race. And a spin at some point for Brian Lee. We don't know why. We don't know whether there was a lapped car in that. We will certainly keep up to date with all of that. But ultimately, you can't discount them. They've been right in this battle all through the season. Aniwat and Promsombat on the top step of the podium.
Third place.
There is John Kwon. Brian Lee looks a little bit more subdued. He'd be a little bit disappointed. But two very gracious competitors usually.
And now let's invite Mr.
Characters. Yeah, it's about as somber as I've seen Brian Lee. I think he'll be a little bit disappointed with that. They would have had the advantage, but only 3 points behind their rivals. And of course, third in the AM classification on their debut, the R&B Racing entry of Liu and Jiaxin Wu. A good, solid performance for the two Thai drivers. Now, if we go through, I just want to check how many wins they'd had this year. So Brian Lee and John Kwon had won on 4 separate occasions, and Aniwat and Promsombat had won once, twice, yesterday's opening race and again. So they've had 4 wins. But unfortunately for Brian Lee and John Kwon, they had a DNF at Sepang during the opening round of the season after strongly finishing. They were on the podium outright, but comfortably taking the victory in the AM category. And that's just mixed things up a little bit. But great mates they are, very friendly, and they'll be very happy with that. Interesting to see Brian and John. Oh, no, they hadn't exited. They'd just gone to get the cork out of the bottle, certainly repaying the favour. And it really has been a highlight this season of the camaraderie between all the teams. There's no bickering, no fighting. The on-track action has been brilliant. To see 2 top teams, 9 races in, tied on points for a championship is absolutely brilliant. So to watch them celebrate on the podium has been a real highlight of this season. As we go through to the final classification, Lamborghini Cup, and another championship that will go all the way down to the wire, like the AM classification at the final at Vallelunga in November. Super Chai taking another victory. I'll just double check how many wins that's been for him this year. This will be win number 5. Kumar Prabhakaran
second place
will be classified in second position. There is Super Chai, the Thai driver on top. Lovely man. Does a great job behind the wheel. Kumar has had 3 wins. Dr. Kumar, just that solitary win alongside Keith Bong. There's Kumar. Diminutive driver. Very big on performance.
It's an honor to invite Mr. Hao Weiming,
and third place in Lamborghini Cup to Harry and Heziko, who, I don't think I've ever seen them not smile. They love the racing so much. They add to the victory, the first victory that they took yesterday. So a solid result for them. Another great win for Super Chai. So that is our podium for round number 5, or their final podium for round number 5. Race number 10 of the 2023 Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia season. Make sure you join us in the middle of November for the final round of the season. It'll be live right here on Squadra Course's YouTube page and various social media platforms. Thank you for joining us. It has been a real pleasure this season, and we look forward to seeing you in season 2024.
Hold on for a second. Now let's welcome everybody. Come back to the podium. We have in the Lamborghini family photo for race 2. Everybody, let's come back for the group photo.